In this video, we will be going through step by step in helping you answer the biggest question one asks when it comes to gadgets: how to choose the best laptop for your needs. Let's start, shall we? Pick your operating system. Choose the operating system, OS, that works best for you before you start looking at laptops. You can choose the hardware you require by considering the software you need to operate and the operating systems it supports. There are 4 main operating systems for computers. Each has advantages and disadvantages. Let's go through all of them quickly. Windows. This vintage operating system still functions well, but no longer receives much attention. If you require Microsoft applications like MS Office, Access, or Outlook, this is the best option. Additionally, Windows laptops are available in a wider variety than any other OS. Mac OS. Compared to Windows, Apple's Mac OS is a little more user-friendly, but it is also closely integrated with the company's products. The only thing you can buy is a MacBook, and that's a whole other conversation. Chrome OS. It is a fantastic option if you can do the majority of your laptop-related tasks through a web browser. Chrome OS is yet another thing to think about if you're on a limited budget, because Chrome laptops are also some of the least expensive that you'll find. The drawback is that programs like Microsoft Office and Adobe's Creative Suite won't function. Some apps, notably Office, do have an Android phone version you might be able to install on your Chromebook or a web version, but it's been found that Android apps often don't run well. Linux. If you don't need MS Office and don't mind a learning curve, you can install Linux on just about any piece of laptop hardware ever created. The catch is that popular apps like MS Office and Adobe's Creative Suite don't support Linux. However, there are free open-source alternatives like LibreOffice, Darktable, Adobe Lightroom Replacement, and GIMP, Adobe Photoshop Replacement. See our Best Linux Laptops guide for some of our favorites. Understanding processor names. CPUs. You can determine the bare minimum hardware requirements you'll need once you've decided on an operating system and have a general concept of the apps you'll use. We advise starting by examining the processor, often known as the chip or the CPU. Consumer laptop processors are essentially only produced by 2 companies, Intel and AMD. Intel processors. Intel's main processors are the Core i3, Core i5, Core i7, and Core i9. The Core i3 is the least powerful, and the Core i9 the most. We usually drop the Core from the name because it gets repetitive. Intel employs cryptic strings of numbers and characters within each of these chip lines to provide additional details on the features and release date of that chip. A laptop manufacturer's website can list the CPU as Intel Core i7-1355U. Let's dig through the remaining figures now that we know Core i7 indicates it's one of the more powerful processors in the lineup. It is a chip from the 13th generation, which is now the most recent generation that is accessible, as shown by the initial numerals 13. The following 2 or 3 numerals, 55, have performance-related meanings. The chip's power increases as these values rise. The purpose of the chip is identified by Intel using a letter like U at the end of the chip name. The letters you'll see at the end for laptops are Y, U, H, and HX. The Y-series chips are optimized for battery life, which is advantageous if you regularly go without a plug for extended periods of time, but it reduces performance slightly, while U chips are power efficient but not extremely efficient. Like the Y-series, H chips are performance optimized. The newest of the lot are the chips with the HX, which Intel refers to as desktop replacement class. Although they are the most powerful of the group, laptops with HX CPUs have shorter battery lives. AMD processors. Just like Intel's, AMD's processor naming is challenging to understand. The 7 denotes the generation, how old it is, higher is better, and the 6 denotes the processor's power in the name AMD Ryzen 5 7600X. The effects of the next 2 numbers are minimal. High performance is indicated by the X at the conclusion. U stands for ultra-low power, which is another letter indication that promotes longer battery life. Is there a huge difference between Intel and AMD chips? Generally speaking, an Intel i5 is indistinguishable from a Ryzen 5 outside of very specific benchmarks. They're similar when you're doing things like browsing the web or editing documents. The same goes for the Intel i7 and Ryzen 7 and the Intel i3 and the Ryzen 3. How much processing power do you need? We recommend a laptop with an Intel Core i5 10th generation or later CPU if you're an average user who operates a web browser, Microsoft's Office suite, and possibly even some picture editing software. The display for that could look like Intel Core i5-10350U. If you can afford it, upgrading to an Intel i7 chip will make your laptop faster. However, more power frequently results in a lower battery life, so you'll need to weigh your demands against that. An i7 or i9 CPU might be used in a laptop for gaming, for example, while an i3 or i5 is typically sufficient for less demanding activities. Similar to how the AMD Ryzen 5000 series will be enough for the majority of users, the Ryzen 7000 is an amazing update. Best processors for Chrome OS laptops. The AMD Ryzen 4000 series is the best for Chromebooks. This series has a powerful enough processor for the majority of tasks and a long battery life, which are harder to find in Chromebooks with Intel processors. There are premium Chromebooks with Intel i5 and even i7 processors available, but unless you're 100% committed to Chrome OS, you're better off investing in a more powerful Windows laptop. A growing number of Chromebooks are also equipped with Qualcomm's Snapdragon series CPUs, which provide a decent balance between power and cost. How much RAM do you need? More is better, right? Your laptop employs random access memory or RAM to store data while the CPU works with it. Consider RAM to be your workspace. You should be able to fit whatever you're working on right now on your desk. Things tumble off of a desk that is too tiny, making it impossible to work on it. Similarly, if your RAM runs out, you won't be able to complete making the video or open any more browser tabs. Your laptop will eventually freeze and require a restart. For the typical Windows user, 8 GB of RAM should be more than plenty, but increasing to 16 GB will significantly increase your laptop's functionality and is required for gaming. If you're creating software or editing video clips, two jobs that need a lot of RAM, you'll need at least 16 GB, though 32 GB is definitely preferable if you can afford it. As with processors, Chrome OS requires less. In a Chromebook, you can generally get by with 4 GB of RAM, though upgrading to 8 GB will let you have more tabs open in your browser without slowing things down. Aim for RAM that has DDR4 next to it. DDR stands for double data rate. DDR4 RAM is speedy and what you want. Most laptops have DDR4 RAM, but manufacturers will list the type on their sites next to the amount, so it's worth checking before you buy. DDR5 RAM has made its way to laptops as well, but it isn't yet widespread. If you do see a laptop with DDR5, though, it will likely be a bit faster at RAM-intensive tasks like gaming and video editing. What about a graphics card? Technically, every laptop has a graphics card, also known as a GPU or discrete graphics. However, the majority are integrated into the motherboard along with the processor. For the majority of users, this approach, which is referred to as integrated graphics, is fine. You won't have any problems playing casual games or watching HD movies. You need a laptop with a discrete graphics card, which is a separate and far more potent graphics card, if you play video games or do a lot of video editing. Most laptop graphics cards are produced by AMD and NVIDIA. An NVIDIA graphics card from the GeForce series, often one of the Max-Q cards, which is the power-saving, laptop-friendly offshoot of NVIDIA's desktop cards, will be coupled with the majority of Intel-based laptops. Typically, they are branded with the card name followed by Max-Q, such as the GeForce GTX 1080 Max-Q. Although a 2000-level card will be more powerful, its battery life may be poor. Although the Max-Q cards typically have 15 to 25% less power than the desktop equivalents, they are still more than suitable for gaming and video editing. AMD's GPU line is called Radeon and ranges from the top-end Vega and RX cards down to R-series cards that mirror the Ryzen naming scheme, where the Radeon R9 is faster and more powerful than the Radeon R7 series, which is more powerful than the Radeon 5 series. How much storage do you need? Your data will be kept on the hard disk. Consider this to be the file cabinet that is next to your desk. Solid-state drives, SSDs, are now the most popular option. However, some low-cost laptops still utilize spinning drives. We suggest staying away from those. If you can afford it, get an SSD disk with at least 256 GB of storage. SSDs are speedier, especially if they connect using an NVMe connection, which transfers data into and out of the hard drive significantly more quickly than the previous SATA standard. There are laptops out there that include an SSD with NVMe for the operating system and an older SATA drive for file storage. With speed where you need it while keeping costs low, you get the best of both worlds. The minimum amount of space we recommend is 256 GB. If you store everything in the cloud or are looking at Chromebooks, you might be able to get by with less, but it's good to have the space if you ever need it. If you plan to install a lot of games or software or save a lot of photos or videos, that will quickly eat up space. You might have observed that your hard disk never seems to have the claimed amount of space. Even if a hard disk is marked as having 512 GB, Windows may only display that it has 490 GB accessible. You aren't wasting space. This is only a result of the distinction between binary and decimal byte size calculations. Drive makers report various sizes because they utilize binary, whereas Windows reports decimal bytes. They are both technically correct, though the size Windows reports is the amount of disk space you can actually use to store files. And that's it for this video. Hope you can now choose the best option available. Please click the like and subscribe buttons down below if you found this interesting. To make sure you don't miss any uploads, tap the bell icon. Share the video to all and provide all of your feedback in the comments section. See you in the next one.